right, we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here and joining us. We are so excited about tonight. And mostly because whenever you take a workshop, you don't always have the opportunity to really get to know your instructor. So we're really excited to have all our Illuminated Scroll instructors here, Roxanne Evans Stout, Seth, Apter, and myself. This is going to be recorded, so you guys will have an opportunity to rewatch it later. So just so you know, if you miss anything or if you have to leave for whatever reason, you can watch it later. After the interviews, we will be opening it up to the viewers for any questions. And so if you have any questions, you can go ahead and place your questions in the chat, as well as any comments that you might want to share. You can also put that in the chat. And there's a chat icon at the bottom of the screen. And if you click on that, a side panel will open up where you can actually type in your comments and questions. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Jen.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jennifer, and I've worked with Lisa at a handful of retreats over the few years. And so I'm just going to be the moderator and kind of ask some questions that you all might be curious to know about your 3 instructors for the weekend. So one thing that you viewers might be curious about them is, where are these people from? Where are they originally from? And where are you guys currently living? So I'm going to start this one off with Seth.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm really excited about this class coming up. I am originally from Connecticut, born and raised there, and I now currently live in New York City, where I've lived now, hard for me to believe, but almost 40 years.
Wow, 40 years in New York City.
Yeah, so I'm 41 years old.
Me too. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Oh, both of you guys are babies.
I know. And Roxanne, what about you?
So I grew up in Southern California in Santa Monica, and I slowly moved my way up north. And now I live in Oregon, Southern Oregon. And I love it here.
Nice. And that's what, so I'm not your instructor, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I'm originally from Southern California, which is how I know Lisa. And I'm now up in Roxanne's area up in Washington. So
right.
Yes, Bellingham specifically. We've had some attendees from Bellingham before, so that's interesting. But Lisa, what about you? Where are you originally from?
Well, I was pretty much born and raised here in Los Angeles, California. I currently live in Sierra Madre, which is north of Pasadena in the foothills. And I lived a portion of my life in Hawaii. So those are the kind of the 2 places that I've been.
Yeah, and one day to eventually go back to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And you're going to take me with you.
We'll do a retreat.
Yes, I know.
The plan. So I know that it's pretty common for artists to have had like a different chapter in their life or something that they did previously different than art. So I just want each of you to tell me a little bit about what you did professionally before you became a full-time artist. And we'll start this one with Roxanne.
So I was a school teacher, a public school teacher in my early 30s or my late 20s. I went back to school and got my teaching credentials and also my art credential. And so I've taught lots of different grades in California and here in Oregon. And my favorite job was middle school art. So that's when I really started to blossom myself as a mixed media artist, but I'll stop there. That's another question.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about, because I also teach art, we talked about having that, the teacher look, the teacher stare. So, you know, you all know who has it. She might give it to you this weekend. Just the teacher stare. Um, and what about you, Seth? What did you do?
Oh, well, I just want to say, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said
Oh, go ahead, Seth.
Sorry. No, Lisa, your turn.
Oh, my turn. So I went into graphic design because I had a teacher who said you can't make a living as an artist. So I became a graphic designer, and I did that for about 18 years. And then I decided to go back to school, get my degree in psychology, and got licensed as a therapist and had my private practice for about 10 years. And then I made the switch over to becoming an artist. So that's kind of, what I used to do before I actually became a serious professional artist. So
nice. And what about you, Seth?
I'm paired up with Lisa on this one. So like the two of you are going to have the teacher stare. We're going to have the compassionate gaze. So prior to becoming a full-time artist, I was a psychologist and initially practiced at a large medical center in New York City, and then transitioned to a private practice as well until I made the move into art.
Wow. It's such a curious, like the relationship between the two, being like a psychologist and then an artist. So I'm curious, just because were you always, this is my own, always doing art through all of this? Like when you were a therapist? Or when you were a teacher, were you doing your own art as a teacher, Roxanne?
Yeah, I was always doing art since I was a little girl. Yeah. Art was my thing. It was like my love, my way to get over, problems, the way to, just make it through the day. Like,
yeah. And Lisa, were you doing art as well when you were doing your therapy work?
I actually did not paint for 20 years. And
wow.
I got to a place in as an intern, I actually decided to start painting again. So it took me many, many years to get back into doing art, but I always did it as a kid, So, yeah.
And I'm just curious, what about you, Seth?
I'm the opposite end of the spectrum there. I was never interested in art, except as a viewer as I got older, but never ever made art when I was younger, as a kid or a young adult either.
Wow, that's interesting. So what I'm curious about next is what led you to make the commitment to a career as an artist? And do you remember like when you really owned the title of like being an artist? Lisa.
Well, I would have to say probably finally being able to say the words, I am an artist, is probably about 8 years ago. Because when I was making a transition from therapist to artist, and somebody would ask me, so what do you do? I would have this pause, like identity crisis. I'm not sure what I do. And then my husband would nudge me and say, you're an artist. I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm an artist. So it took a while for me to get really comfortable with, owning that label.
And what about you, Seth?
Well, it's such a long story and I'm not going to share it because it's too long, but suffice it to say that I just met a person in the year 2000 that introduced me to the world of art, and that shifted my direction. And it was just a slow process to shift over from psychology to art. And I would say that I pretty much called myself an artist from the start. I'm one of these people who don't think the word artist is anything special, in the sense that you have a kid, you're a parent, you work in the garden, you're a gardener, you make stuff with paper, you're an artist. So for me, it's not like a capital A, it's a little a.
Oh, interesting.
And that's great. And just so, Roxanne, before I get to you, I had that experience because I've worked with kids a lot doing murals, and I would always ask, like, is there an artist in the group? And every single one of them raises their hand. And I did other murals with adults, and I'd be like, are there any artists? And like maybe one person would raise their hand. And I'm always curious, like when that transition happens, because kids own it. They're like, I'm an artist and it doesn't matter. And then as people get older, they get more like, you have to reclaim that. So, I mean, it's kind of awesome to hear that you were like, I'm an artist from the day you decided that's what you were going to do. I mean, it's pretty cool. And so what about you, Roxanne? When did you commit to art and when did you really claim that title of being an artist?
I think I always thought I was an artist. I think because, my mom was an artist and she told me I was one. And, but as far as committing to being like a working artist, I think happened about almost 10 years ago. And that's when I decided to leave my teaching job, public school teaching job, and took an early retirement and just went in full blasted to doing art and teaching workshops. And so that's when I could say it, I guess, with more meaning, not quite so lofty.
Right. And then I guess like the next transition of that is, when did you make the transition from becoming, okay, I'm an artist to now I'm an instructor? And when you did that, because not every artist becomes an instructor.
Right.
So when, what led you to make that move? I'm gonna start with Seth this time.
It took me a while to feel comfortable with the idea that I could teach art, in part because I don't have any formal training in it at all. And I taught my first class in 2012, and it was actually, I'm going to say it's a little bit of a setup. There's a shop in New York City called the Ink Pad, and basically Anna, who's the owner of the Ink Pad, announced one day that I was going to be teaching at her place because she had asked me and I kept saying no. And so it sort of just happened. And the first experience for me was really wonderful. And I had taught as a psychologist, so I was familiar with teaching and being with people. And it just blossomed from there.
Yeah, I think being like a therapist and then taking care of people, and it's like, would be a smooth transition. I could see that. And so what about you, Lisa?
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't put those two together. I think I've always wanted to teach. And I remember when I was like 7 or 8, I would say, I want to be an art teacher when I grow up. But I never thought I would get to that place where I could get the courage to teach. But it was something that I was already doing, like Seth said, already doing with my clients. And because you do a lot of teaching in that work. So I made the transition in 2015. And I finally got the courage to do it. So.
Awesome. And what about you, Roxanne?
So I think when I was teaching kids, I always loved teaching adults, like in services and sharing ideas. And so I knew I liked to teach adults too. And then I got to go on a really great art retreat up at Salt Springs Island. We might have talked about that once before, but with Nick Bantock. And I kind of decided this is what I want to do. I wanted to do art retreats, art workshops. And so that's when, I decided I wanted to do that. I think it was always in the back of my head for some reason, maybe because I have a teaching background.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 And another thing about teaching to adults is, because we work with kids all day. And so that's why I really appreciate doing these retreats with Lisa, because then I get to tag along and be with adults. Yeah. So Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, I know for me, I started out painting with oil paints, doing realistic imagery like florals, pretty traditional art painting. And then at some point I got bored with that because I felt like, with realistic painting, and you kind of know what you're going to get in the end. So I made the transition from that to mixed media because I wanted that freedom, that spontaneity. I was so drawn to blending materials. How about you guys? Like, what made that transition when you decided to be not be an artist, but pursue an art career? Did you automatically go into mixed media, or did you start in watercolors? Curious. Seth?
I actually started in bookbinding. So my first any kind of training at all, which again, it's not formal training, but any kind of training, was at the Center for Book Arts in New York. And I was just making book after book after book. These are all blank books. And it really became quite unsatisfying. And right around that time, there was some of the artists out there were starting to publish books about mixed media. The book True Colors, if you don't know that, you need to find out about that. And that just opened up my world to this idea that, you mean I don't need to just make the books, I can actually fill the books. And it really went from there, where the books became less important in terms of the actual binding process. And what really became important was just the pages and the mixed media of it all. And it's just continued that way since.
Yeah, that's interesting that you started, typically you start like canvas, that's or drawing paper or watercolor paper. So that's very cool that you started in books. So that's cool. Roxanne?
So I did start with watercolors and pen and ink and pencil drawings. And then I moved into, other things, especially when I was in the college. But or art, when I was getting my art credentials, but the thing that really changed me into mixed media was also the book arts. And Seth and I did a collaboration back then about with a book, and I didn't know what an artist book was, and so he mailed me some, and it was really, really cool to see the books that had art inside of them. So the art was not something you necessarily hung up or would hang up. It was just that kind of like a continuation of a story. So I think it was the book arts that changed me into mixed media.
Well, that's interesting, because the idea of artist books is fairly new to me, because I always thought of art journals, right? And I taught art journaling, but artist books has been something fairly new and has been really interesting in terms of, like you said, Roxanne, the pages hold the art. And then there's an interesting process in which you close the book and it doesn't hang up on the wall. It's either on the shelf or maybe it's somewhere else. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about this book arts. What do you think, Seth, in terms of having art in a book that's closed versus having art that's on the wall?
Well, I always think that, and I always say that book arts is amongst the most intimate of art mediums, because in order for somebody to view it, they have to hold it, they have to touch it, they turn the pages. And as Roxanne said, a book really lends itself to telling a story from beginning to middle to the end. And telling your story, whether it's visually or in words, is such a personal thing. So actually, I kind of think of these books as little treasures. Yeah, and so for me, it's almost, I like the fact that you almost typically don't hang them up or even display them, because they're these sort of little treasures to safeguard but obviously, at least in my case, allow people to touch and share and read.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I'm thinking about when I started teaching online last year, my pieces had to go small because we had to do this virtual versus, bigger panels or whatever. And there's something about, I don't know, maybe it's just something about the whole situation that we've been in for the last 18 some months that we do work in these books. I found myself wanting to work more in books versus canvas. Like, I haven't really done anything on a board in probably since the pandemic. So it's interesting. That's what I'm curious about. I know, what does books mean to you, Roxanne?
a book, an artist book is like Seth says, it's like a treasure. And sometimes when I do one, I don't really know what direction it's going to be in. I don't know what story I'm going to tell, but it still tells the story of the passage of time, like during COVID. What's going on in your life? What colors are you drawn to? What shapes and what images or papers and textures, and it all just, it tells a story, and that means so much to me. So I love art. I love artist books. I love art journals too. There's a very fine line between them, I think.
So you would consider them different though, and how would you consider them that different?
I would because an art journal to me is a more way you hash out your feelings, and you maybe deal with your life and what's good or bad. And in an artist book, I think that still might be there, but maybe it's more hidden. I don't know. It's hard to.
But that, yeah, because there's a fine line. I think there is a fine line.
I think there might be a difference between sometimes when you're writing, like I think, and I don't know, the therapist can talk to this, like you're actually working from a different part of your brain that's more cognitive and decision making, or when you're just doing a book, like you said, with textures and colors and feelings, you're kind of more in that emotional part of your brain. So you're actually having a different interaction with your medium and a different experience, like literally the way your brain is experiencing the process. Just a thought.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly, Jen. Because I think, and I tell my students when I'm teaching art journaling, is that when you're having to formulate sentences, you do switch back and forth to the linear brain. And then now you have to focus on how am I going to describe this feeling or experience. When versus a visual art journal, you don't have to use any words. You can do it all through visual colors and stuff like that. But what happens is that taps into almost the subconscious part of our brain. And sometimes you don't even have to think about what you're putting on the page. It just automatically goes on there. And then there is a story that has formulated and unfolded from your subconscious. And you're not even having to write a paragraph about what I did today, what happened, how I felt. So,
well, and I think that's that, I know it's kind of like the buzzword that's come out the last couple of years, like flow state. When you're in just that flow state where you're not thinking, and that's where everybody does those adult coloring books.
Yeah,
it gets them into that flow state, and this is just a more sophisticated way to do art through mixed media. And so that's why with you're talking about bookmaking and mixed media, which ties us right back to scrolls, which is what everyone's going to be doing this weekend. So I would say, like, a question I have is kind of what are you, each of you as instructors, like, what are you hoping your students take away from your workshop this weekend? Like, what would you want to impart upon them? How about Roxanne?
I would like them to see the scrolls as, first we're going to work on them flat and see them as a story unfolding, and watch their work evolve, discover new things, and have fun and try out different processes, and together, when everything comes together, I would like them to have, well, it's like the artist book, just a really cool, mysterious, tactile piece of work that they can hide and roll up or hang on the wall. So I really want them to have fun. Like, that's what I want the most.
And how about you, Seth? Does it sound like I'm saying Lisa?
Yeah, you said like Lisa Seth.
Seth.
No.
Seth is the other instructor who's out tonight.
Yes.
I guess I'll go. Well, first I agree with Roxanne, fun. I always try to have my classes be oriented toward it's just fun. It's just really important to me. But I'd probably say other than that, there's probably two different things in general. The first is whenever I teach a class that has a project, which most of them do, the project is the excuse for the class. Sorry, Lisa, I didn't tell you this before. So while we're all going to make scrolls, what I feel like I'm doing is I'm really teaching technique that you can apply to your own artwork. So my hope is that something I show you will inspire something that you can take back to your own artistic practice. Mm-hmm. Maybe a technique, maybe an approach or a method. And you can say, oh man, when I do my so-and-sos, that's really going to shift things. And then the other thing is that you just, I guess, can't take the shrink out of the shrink. So most of my classes also involve just encouragement and trying to build confidence. And you guys are hiding in a little bit because we can't all see your projects. But, you know, to encourage just to go further than you would normally feel comfortable going, not worry about the outcome, let loose, and which goes back to what Roxanne said, ultimately will allow you not only to make something great, but to have fun in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lisa.
Yeah, I think it comes all back to fun. And yeah, I was just mesmerized with Seth's, the way he was just saying it. It is important to remember that even like he said, even though you have a project, that the fun part of mixed media is that any of these techniques can be applied to any type of project. But I think we all kind of feel like we really want the students, you guys out there, to have fun, to not feel pressured to have to finish the project. All this in the next 3 days, you can actually continue it. You can rewatch the recordings and catch up. So there's no pressure to finish it. There's no pressure to have it perfect. And it is mostly about having fun and enjoying the experience.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is, like all of you kind of have said, it's the just learning the techniques. It's not getting the project to look like the project. There's, as you're all talking, I keep having that proverb come back of, give them a fish, they'll eat for a day. Teach them to fish, they'll have food forever. So like, you want to learn how to fish this weekend. You want to learn how to try these techniques and how to use that technique. And whether it works the first time or the second time, you can carry it on beyond this weekend and try it a third, fourth, fifth, and you might have a different outcome every time you do it. And that's kind of the little mystery and the little nuggets of fun that you have, is just the like, where's this going to go? And being free with it. So
yeah. And you make a good point. You don't just do the technique once. You should repeat it several times after what you learn, because that way you get to know it, you get more familiar with the new techniques, and then that's when you can expand how you might use that technique. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. And also just with, you know, everybody's coming to the table with a little bit of different experience. And the one thing that I personally love about paint that has always brought me back to paint is the feeling of it. And you can't really teach the feeling of paint until you do it, when you feel it's starting to set up, and then you feel when you have working time, and you don't learn that unless you do it and practice it and try it. And then you start to figure it out. And it's this like unknown, like you don't have to speak about it. It's a feeling, which is kind of what everybody's going for, is to get that feeling.
Yeah. And different materials feel differently and work differently. And again, you do have to eventually develop that experience with feeling of acrylic versus oil versus watercolor, versus pastels and collage. I mean, it all feels different.
Yeah. And just find what resonates with you. Yeah. So I don't know, are there any other questions in the chat room that you wanted to review, Lisa?
Yeah, we can actually open it up to the viewers. If you guys have any questions, just put it in the chat, and we'll go from there. So we invite you to, let's see if there's any questions here. So Trina is asking, what part of Southern Oregon does Roxanne live in? I was born and raised in Ashland.
I'm just over the mountain from Ashland in a little town called Keno, and it's on the way to Klamath Falls, Trina. And I love Ashland. It's great. I have my work on display in a gallery there, and it's called Ashland Artworks. If you know that one, it's a really beautiful little gallery, lots of gardens and kind of funky. And yeah, Ashland has been like my second home kind of since I've lived here. So that's
great.
Where I live, and you know it well. Thanks.
So Margaret wants to share that she saw both Roxanne and Seth's art on Fiber Arts, Take Two. Wonderful interviews and sharing of their work. She just wanted to comment on that.
Well, Margaret, thank you. That was a fun interview.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret, so much. Appreciate that you took the time to listen and see the work there.
And you told us.
Kathleen is asking, I probably should know this, but what is dry waxed paper, Seth?
It's deli paper. If you're not sure what deli paper is, you can ask me that as well. I just put it as dry waxed because apparently there's a number of different deli papers out there that you can get. And the one that I use, it says on the box that it's dry waxed. Deli paper, you know, okay. But in all honesty, you can pretty much use anything for the techniques. Deli paper works the best for what we're going for, but if you don't have a traditional deli paper, even a tissue paper would be okay, or a very lightweight paper.
Good.
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm. The next one?
Yeah, the one that just popped up. Have you guys written your own books on art or something? I don't know. It went away. What was it?
It says, I saw Seth, to continue that, I saw Seth has but Lisa or Roxanne. No, I did. I personally don't have one yet, but it's in the makings.
You heard it here first.
I know, now I'm really going to have to.
You have to do it.
How about you, Roxanne?
I have a couple of books, and one's more with projects and techniques and processes, and one's more, a little more like a coffee table book. And they're just both a joy to create, and they're both on Amazon. If you look under Roxanne Evans Stout on Amazon, you'll see my books. And yeah, Seth, I'll let Seth tell. Seth has books too.
And I'm in one of your books? Oh.
You are in one of my books.
I am, yeah, my artist anyway. And I also have two books out. One's called The Mixed Media Artist, and the other is The Pulse of Mixed Media. They're also available on Amazon. They are not how-to books at all. They're more about creativity, and it's almost a little bit more about sort of getting inside the minds of artists, and Roxanne's in my book as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like the best thing ever when I got to read your book. That was kind of what changed me too.
Well, thank you. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And actually, I was looking at one of the mixed media books. Roxanne and I are published in the same book, and I can't remember if it was book one or book two.
Insights.
Insights.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. Roxanne, we have a question. Will we be covering up the cloth we use? I have a pillowcase I could use, but it's not all white. So
that's a good question. We're not going to be covering it up really heavily. I'm going to have you, I don't know. It depends on how light the designs are in your pillowcase. So we're going to have a heavier gesso in the middle and lighter around the edges so that we can paint and texture around the edges. So I guess because if that's what you have, we could just cover up your whole thing heavily. I think that'll be fine. Does that help?
Yeah, I think Christy was saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, stains are good. They're
a bonus.
Yeah, we're always trying to make our own stains, right?
I thought it was like going to be bunny rabbits or something.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh, how was working with Nick Pantalk? Does that
Pantalk? Yeah, it was. I didn't really work with him. He was the teacher. He was amazing. He was like he kind of helped me with a lot of my projects, and that's during the time I was transitioning into leaving the public school, and yeah, he was amazing. What are the books that he wrote? Sabine, Griffin and Sabine, like a whole series of beautiful books with mixed media books that had envelopes with letters inside of them.
I had those.
Yeah.
Those are wild
amazing.
books.
Yeah. So he was amazing to have as a teacher. Just the projects he had us do, very mysterious and really great. It was really great. The workshop. And then Annie wrote that she flipped on the bathroom tile. Oh, Annie.
We're so sorry to hear that.
I'm so sorry. That must. I'm just reading your comment here. Oh, Annie, you'll be better soon.
We'll do our best to distract you.
Yeah.
I miss you, Annie.
Oh my gosh.
See what else is here.
Kimberly Ann said this is a great trilogy. Trilogy, yes. Thanks, Kimberly.
Oh, that's really nice.
Will each of these classes need a theme? Do I need to plan something? Like an intention for? Not necessarily, I don't think. I think the only theme I was saying this is totally optional. You can get quotes, gratitude quotes to make your scroll something for Thanksgiving, but that's totally optional. So it's whatever you guys want to do, I think, right, Seth, right, Roxanne?
Yeah, you don't need a theme for mine either. It's you're going to have you're going to be using different textures and just different ideas that I'll present tomorrow that I think they'll just all kind of fit together. So, well, if you have a certain color you like, have those colors handy in your colors of paint or papers. But I think it's all just going to come to you. It's all going to happen.
Just have options for your moods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You never know what might strike your fancy.
I don't know, Seth, if you can see that next comment.
Yeah, good question.
About pre-process?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Michelle asked a really interesting question. For me, whether I teach or when I'm lucky enough to take a workshop, I agree with you that from the moment I register, I feel like the workshop started. And I absolutely love collecting things for my workshops. I always want to make my art my own, which means it's my own little doodads and thingamabobs, and finding the ones for the classes are just the best. So I love that. So I always do that, whether I'm teaching a workshop or whether I'm taking it. Sometimes all those great things, most of them don't even find their way into the artwork, but that's okay. I still think the process of collecting it kind of generates ideas that just come out to start the project, and then the project has a life of its own and goes wherever it needs to go. But I'm with you on this. It's the best.
Yeah, and also it can spark other ideas for other projects later. Just the pre-process part.
Yeah, and then the process, and then also what you guys are teaching this weekend, the techniques. Those are all things that can just spark that flow, get you in that zone to just keep going. So yeah, techniques, materials, and time and space. So, I mean, the fact that everyone is, I know personally, just as an artist, and I have a full-time career, is finding that time and that space to make art for myself. And so just the fact that all of you, your blank faces out there, I recognize some of your names, like to sign up to dedicate 3 days to yourself for these workshops, it says a lot about just your commitment to yourself as an artist, and kind of your value system. Like, you value yourself enough as an artist to take this time and make the investment, to be here and show up and learn new stuff, meet new people. I'd be curious how many people have actually taken your classes before, and kind of how you all feel at the end of the weekend.
Well, I just wanted to say about what you were just saying, Jen, is like, when you're taking a workshop like this, a live workshop or online workshop, you're honoring yourself as an artist, you're honoring your art. And it's almost like you're giving a gift to yourself. And so, you know, what a wonderful thing, you know, that we do that for ourselves as mixed media artists. And the other thing is about collecting and gathering. I love to collect and gather too. And I imagine there's, you know, most of us out there do, because the whole thing about mixed media art is different materials. And I do, as soon as I start planning a workshop, either taking it or giving it, I start thinking about it. It's on my mind. It's like, that's what I'm getting ready for. That's, you know, how I go through my day thinking about this workshop, you know, and I love collecting nature and art things to use. If I don't use them in my art, I have them, like Lisa said, on for inspiration. So they might lead to something else. But
yeah, I think it's easy for us to get so busy with our lives and, you know, our routines and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people have a hard time setting a chunk of time to do their art. So, you know, like Jen mentioned, making a commitment to a workshop or a retreat really means that you are carving some time out. And you're really honoring that part of yourself, that artistic self, to say, okay, these 3 days, this is what I'm doing for 3 days. So, yeah. So there's a lot of aspects of it's just not taking a workshop or learning from different instructors. There's a lot more around the whole process of taking a workshop.
Well, and it's fun reading all the comments. Everybody,
I love this.
And then, like, I've taken Seth's workshops in person. I've taken this from Roxanne. I've taken this. And so for those of you who this is your first workshop, like, you picked a good one. And because all 3 of these instructors, if you like this, like, there's more. Like, they each have, this could be like your first of many. Because as you can see from the comments, like, you can take more than one from them, and you're going to get something out of all of them. And I mean, it's one of the things that I miss doing the retreats with Lisa, is we kind of would have a handful of people who would take the workshop 2, 3, 4 times. And so it was kind of, for me personally, just as assisting Lisa, it was nice to, like, oh, I'm going to see, you know, so-and-so again. I'm not going to play favorites. I'm not going to throw out names of so-and-so, but
so-and-so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
and
of you, you know who you are.
I think Roxanne and Seth really know that you start seeing familiar faces over and over, and
They love it.
It starts to become kind of like your family members, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, and I think that's something to be said, like, as you know, it's like finding your tribe. Like this is what we love to do. This is what we enjoy doing. And then when you're surrounding yourself with other people who love to do it, it's kind of like your people. We're all the same peeps on this. Yes. So it's going to be fun.
So I wanted to respond to Betty's comment. I'm used to live workshops, but an online one like this is a bit intimidating. Totally understandable. A lot of people feel the same way. We're here to help walk you through the process. Once you get a hang of it, you're going to get addicted, because this is really, live workshops are great, and there's some things that you just can't replace virtually, but virtual workshops are a great supplement to the live workshops and retreats. So you're going to have a lot of fun, Betty.
And if I could add one thing to that, Betty, historically, I've really only taught in person. Relatively speaking, online workshops, other than a few, are a result of the pandemic for me. And believe you me, as a new instructor online, it's intimidating to me as well. And no doubt to some of the other instructors. So you're in good company. And I will tell you that once you get going, it will just feel like heaven. It should really just feel great.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really exciting to me is because as I've watched the registrations come in, we have people from, Singapore, people from Germany, Australia. I'm assuming those are your peeps, Seth, Australia. And UK, Canada. I mean, it's just, we wouldn't have this opportunity like this, during this time. And this is what's really great. Oh, wow. Cool. People are saying.
Oh, they're flying through all the places that they're from.
Very cool, guys. Yay.
Oh, well, let me say, Kathleen, I can't believe when you took my 3 workshops at Art and Soul, I thought, oh no, she's going to be so tired of me by the end of it. But it was great. It was a great weekend. And I don't think she got tired, but maybe tired, but maybe not of me. But Renelle, I saw all your suitcases on the Instagram post, and I can't believe all the supplies you brought. Let me just say that Renelle and 2 of her friends are taking this workshop together, and I think I'm right. They met at the coast and they rented a house, and they're all taking the workshop in Oregon. So at the Oregon coast. So that's really cool.
How fun.
What a fun way to do this.
Yes.
I'm looking at all the where everybody's from come through, and I mean it's a very international mix here. And I think somebody asked how many people will be taking the class. That was one of the questions that came through.
We have 51 people live, and we have about 30 non-Zoomers.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a big class tomorrow.
Yeah, and you are going to have breakout rooms. So you will get a chance to meet and talk to and visit with the other people taking the classes as well. Yes,
and this is an opportunity for you guys to actually meet your fellow workshop attendees and your fellow creatives. So you'll be able to interact with each other. And I'm going to walk you through that process with the breakout rooms. So yeah, that's going to be a fun little feature of the next few days. And I'll be holding my breath as I push the button. send you off to your virtual rooms.
It's all that. There's a lot of chatting going on.
I know, it's great.
I love that.
I think you're all ready to meet each other. I don't think tomorrow can come soon enough.
Oh, it's going to be great. And I'm going to be up tomorrow. So I'm the first one. So hopefully everything will go smoothly. I'm sure it will.
Did you see Kent J, I guess I'll brush my hair then. Oh. Yeah, you could just make sure you have a nice top, but anything below that could be like pajamas.
Just be careful if you've heard the stories on Zoom about people standing up.
Yeah.
I get fully dressed.
Yeah, get fully.
No business on the top, party on the bottom.
Oh, you guys, look at Helen's from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or is that Kathleen?
That's right.
Someone's from New Zealand. I saw that fly through.
Yeah, that's so great. So it's the next day in New Zealand.
Oh, so a day ahead, like a day ahead of us.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Welcome. And then California, Las Vegas, Montana, Washington.
New Mexico.
Yeah, that's so great. Some more new people. Dawn, welcome. Yeah, that's just so great.
Yeah, it's getting exciting. So any more questions, guys? Yeah, we start at 10 Pacific Standard Time and we go till 3:30. So make sure that you, since we have quite a bit of people here, just make sure that you got all the emails I sent you. I want to make sure that you have all that information and make sure that you do figure out your time difference. So I sent you a link for the time zone converter. So you'll be able to figure out what time to adjust. So make sure you do that so you don't miss out.
Did you get that question? Will you send a new link for tomorrow?
Yes, I'm going to send that when we're done tonight. I'll be sending the Zoom link for tomorrow's class. Yeah.
And I want to just give a shout out to Dawn, who is going to be starting at 5 a.m. Aussie time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Dawn,
lunchtime going to be at 5 a.m.? It sounds like
lunchtime. Oh, it's lunchtime here right now. It's lunchtime there tomorrow.
Okay. Margaret says, Roxanne, I have 2 pieces of cloth, one cotton and the second a looser weave linen. Is one better than the other?
I think, why don't we put texture on both of them tomorrow? I think we'll have time, and then you can kind of see how they react to the gesso and see which one you prefer.
Good answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I am gonna encourage you guys, if you do have an extra piece, to gesso it, because I'm gonna have you practice doing the stencils on that piece, on a piece of it, so that you can see how they're gonna work out. Because if you don't put a lot of gesso on it, the stenciling doesn't work as well. So, and that's why I'm having you do heavier gesso in the center of your piece. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if this doesn't make sense to you, because I'll explain it all, tomorrow. We'll talk about it.
So will muslin work as well?
Yes, muslin would work as well.
Okay.
Muslin is really nice. I would have said muslin or linen, but a lot of people don't have that. And I thought everybody has an old pillowcase, so that works really well.
Even if you're still using it.
Maybe not. It's going to be all hard and crunchy.
That's funny. Yeah, mixed media artists will make use of everything.
Right.
That's why we hoard everything.
If it's organized, it's not hoarding.
Yeah, well, organize her. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Organize clutter.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Any other questions? Yeah, multiple scrolls.
Why does Seth use cling stamps? I use cling stamps, and what I mean by cling stamps are just stamps that are not wood mounted, because the techniques that I use encourage you to make all the art your own. So we're all, hypothetically, if we're all using the same stamp and it's not mounted, you can bend it and use segments of it and only ink parts of it and be very inconsistent with how you use it for impressions. And so everybody would end up with a different mark. And so for me, it's just about the idea that they're not mounted. They can be rubber stamps. They could be rubber stamps with no cling on the back. They could be clear acrylic stamps, just not mounted. And if you're an old school type and you only have mounted stamps, don't panic. We'll make those work as well.
There's a question about gesso. No, I wanted to just do the gesso with you because I wanted to just go over how I'm doing it so that you guys don't use too much or too little gesso, and we'll be drying. Also, I have a heat gun ready because we'll be drying them in class too, you know.
Yeah, I'm also having you guys gesso the watercolor paper as well. That adds a little, not only texture to the surface, but it also thickens the
Right.
watercolor paper as well.
Strength.
And I'm not using gesso.
Gesso schmesso.
And I love the idea that you cut up bottoms of shoes for the stamping. That is
Yeah, that's
awesome.
really neat.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, never thought of that. Cool. Yes. You do want to gesso the watercolor paper, and I put a link to my YouTube tutorial so you can follow that. It's basically just gessoing and texturing the front and the back of the watercolor paper, and then you can cut it to 3x9. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Anybody want to squeeze in a few questions before we leave?
Oh, I have one for Jen. I don't think she got to answer. But did you used to draw or paint when you were little?
All the time.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
All the time. I was always told, you know, that's going to be a great hobby for you one day. A really good hobby. Yeah.
Right.
And I thought of it that way until I was about 25. And I just sort of realized I wasn't happy if I wasn't creating. And I realized, which I think, I mean, if I'd have been younger would have been better, but I'm glad at least I discovered it in my 20s that it's an essential part of like my existence to be creating in some form or another. And as I've gotten older, every career choice I've made has been in the arts and doing art. And who knows, maybe a few years from now, I'll be teaching online classes.
You will be. I can tell you're getting ready.
Yeah. Right now I'm an online class supporter. But yeah, it's I've always been an artist.
Good for you. I thought so.
Yeah. And I actually, Kimberly, I'm going to share what she sent me, a little private chat, is so I would do henna at the retreats. And so I put this tape on it so they can sleep with the henna on. And then when they pull the tape off, the henna is often on the cloth. And a lot of the students would incorporate that into their mixed media on the papers. And Kimberly just sold a piece that had some of the henna on it.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I hope it's okay I shared that.
It's very cool to see what students do with different materials like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we'll wrap it up. I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Seth, for staying up.
Everybody.
And thank you, everybody in different countries that for either staying up or being up early to join us tonight. So we appreciate all of you being here. We look forward to spending the next 3 days with you guys. And we'll see you first thing tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the morning.
Yeah.
So, and again, just to remind you, this is being recorded so you guys can watch it later. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
We'll see you
soon.
tomorrow.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.